All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I know it is just barely the top of the hour here, but in the interest of time and the fact that we have a full hour of content for you today, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm Chelsea Treseder with MVP, and I want to thank you so much for being here. I'm going to kick us off here with a quick roadmap of what we're going to cover today. I'm going to start us off by explaining who we are and why we have this incredible amount of data that enables us to empower independent hearing care practices with real-time data-based insights. Will from the MVP team is going to share some really interesting data from as recently as last week about why we're here today and what we're seeing in the data. Then we're going to turn to our panel of experts who have so graciously joined us here today to have them weigh in on why they think these trends are happening and what practices can do about it. They are each only going to have 8 minutes. We're going to have a timer running. So this is definitely going to be fast and furious. And finally, we will open it up to questions at the end and answer as many of those as we can. So I am seeing a lot of familiar names and faces here, lots of existing MVP users, but for everyone else, I want to take just a minute to explain what MVP is and how it's made today possible. MVP is the hearing care industry's business intelligence platform. Business intelligence is the discipline of taking enormous amounts of data, enriching and transforming the data, and then using that data to provide actionable insights to stakeholders in a business. By integrating directly with your existing office management system, MVP eliminates any manual work for you or your team and shows you exactly what's happening in your business and why, with dozens of critical KPIs calculated for you, not only at the company level, but down to the clinic and provider across any time period you like. MVP features nightly automatic updates, forecasting, detailed and powerful data mining, goal setting and tracking, benchmarking to like-size practices, your market share and penetration rate, automated emails and alerts, and language-based data interpretation. So with that robust set of features, the primary purpose of MVP is for individual practices to be able to understand their business in real time. But because we have over 1,000 clinics in the MVP dataset, we're also able to look beyond individual practices and can pull out trends and insights that are happening across the industry in near real time. I want to pause for just a second to explain why we're hosting an event like this today with over 500 attendees. And I think the best way to do that is to share with you all a couple of our guiding principles here at MVP. The first one is data equality. We give small, medium, and large sized private practices across the country and in other countries as well access to business intelligence tools that are more robust than those that their more well-funded competitors are using. And that allows these private practices to essentially fight above their weight class. We also aim to automate every managerial task we can to enable practice leadership to focus on taking action rather than trying to figure out what's going on and what to do about it. And finally, we are obsessed with the success of private practice. It's our mission to empower private practice owners by arming them with insights that will allow them to better manage their business, because we know that you provide the best care for patients. So with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce Will. So this is Will Dials from the MVP team. He is the co-founder of MVP and also our BI architect. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Will.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. Hopefully you can see my screen okay here.
Yep, looks good.
Great. So before we dive in here, let's just quickly set the stage of what data we're going to be looking at today. So this section of the data set we're going to cover today represents the US market only, which is primarily because there are key differences between the definitions of metrics like private pay and third-party units when we look at them across countries. So for the purpose of this, we're going to focus on just the US market. However, I will note that we are seeing similar trends internationally. This represents approximately 1,100 FTE, and it's only representing the independent hearing care channel. Not the other segments that exist in the retail market. So why are we here today? Because there's something that many have noticed and are talking about, and something that we can also observe in the data set that clearly warrants our attention. And that's that new patient appointments year to date are down about 14%. So we obviously don't want to overreact to short-term fluctuations in business. And this isn't just about a single data point today. We're going to zoom out a little bit and take a look at some broader trends to try to understand why we might be seeing this. Okay, so over the past several years, we've seen steady, strong growth in the number of new patient appointments coming into practices. However, if you look more recently, something somewhat unprecedented has occurred, where we now have 3 and potentially 4, if you include this quarter, which is not done yet. We've seen decline in these quarters in the number of new patients coming into the practices in the MVP data set. So this shift is quite ahistorical. It's not something that we've observed at any point in time in the data set. And what makes this trend even more alarming is when we overlay it with the growth of 65 plus population in the country. You would expect that as more Americans age into the hearing care market, the demand for our services would increase. But instead, we're seeing the opposite, at least for the last several quarters. So this divergence just raises some questions about what's driving this slowdown and maybe how we should respond to it. So let's take a closer look at what 2025 is looking like so far. And an important note before we get into it, that this is a small sample size. We don't want to overreact. It's only January 1st, first of the year through February 20th, which was Thursday of last week. That's 36 business days, which is also the same number of days we had in the same period last year. So we should be cautious about overinterpreting any sort of short-term fluctuations, but I still think some of these trends warrant our attention. So here's what 2025 looks like so far across some key metrics from a year-over-year perspective. Revenue and overall private pay unit business is essentially flat. TPA units, interestingly, are down considerably year over year. And as we've already discussed, new patient appointments are down about 14% year over year. So a couple of quick definitions that we need to just kind of cover really quickly, because it's going to be relevant for future slides here. But we break out private pay units into new patient units versus existing patient units. And it's simply new patient units are sold to patients within 6 months of their first appointment. Existing patient units are beyond 6 months of their first appointment. So we can see that the new patient units are falling and they're down year over year. So what's keeping the revenue overall and the units stable? It's the existing patient sales, which is great. But in the long term, the drop in new patient appointments is concerning, as you can't really, you can't sell hearing aids to an existing patient if they weren't a new patient to begin with. So let's take a look at how some of the other recent years have looked from this same perspective, just to get an idea kind of the historical context of what we're seeing so far. So if we look at 24, again, same dates, first of the year through the 20th of February, lots of green. 23, 22, 21, a little bit of a weird time. That was, I think, the first wave of the first COVID variant that kind of wreaked havoc there for a while. Even 2020 started off great. Now, this date range covers before the pandemic took effect. And 2019 was a great year as well. So, this year it's a little bit different, though. There's plenty of red on the screen, and it's reasonable to point to factors like weather. We've had really bad weather in parts of the country, really bad flu season, which is not helpful at all, and just general macroeconomic uncertainty. So those are all very reasonable hypotheses for what's going on here. But I think we really need to take a look at those trends that we see in new patients declining, going back to as early as the beginning of last year, to understand what's really going on. So let's take a moment now and look at some monthly trends to get a clearer picture of what might be happening here. So we can see that new patient units, the same as the first chart. We're just looking at it by month here. We can see that it kind of bottomed out in December and has thankfully been moving in the right direction, January and February. However, still a little bit lower than the historical numbers that we've seen in the past. If we overlay private pay units over this same period of time, just to kind of see what, if any, correlation there are, I think it's reasonably correlated for the most part, that as new patient volumes grow, so do the private pay units. Now, that's changed if you look at the back half of last year, where the new patient units or the new patient appointments continued to decline, but the overall units actually kind of spiked. So for just a moment here, let's look at the new patient units per day over the same period of time. And you can see there's a much tighter correlation there. So this just kind of reinforces the point that the new patient volume has a direct impact on the overall unit sales. So if we know that the units continued to climb last year, and we know the new patients trended downward, that means one thing that's pretty obvious, that the existing patient unit sales is what really carried us through the back half of last year. And this is where the strength has been, the strong finish to the year for sure. And then whatever we're seeing so far in 2025, we can pretty much attribute entirely to the strength of the existing patient unit sales in these practices. Okay, so if we step away from new patient appointments for just a second, we wanted to take a look at unit sales trends to see if there was any kind of differences in purchasing patterns, what people are buying. And so we took a look at sales by technology level. And so here's a look at what it looks like, what unit sales have looked like by month when we don't filter for any different types of technology levels. And a quick note here, the color of each column is based on its relative performance to the trailing 12 months before it. So green would be growth, red would be significantly below, and then gray is kind of just slightly below. So overall, private pay units have been somewhat steady other than January, which we know was a really soft month. But when we look at it by technology level, we see some interesting data here. So if we look at premium and advanced products only, we can see that those units are trending up. Again, January was soft, we know that, but generally speaking, lots of green on the chart, and just continued growth in that segment. And when we look at entry level and basic hearing aids, we see a different story. Much more red and a clear downward trend in that segment of the market. So one possible explanation would be that the market may be self-selecting for higher end consumers. The other potential explanation is that private practices have been adopting competitive strategies such as the Access Hearing Program that offer premium and advanced products that allow practices to compete against the proliferation of managed care. So that may be strengthening the premium and advanced units by essentially pushing units that would have otherwise been mid or entry level into that premium category. So we don't know. Is this an emergence of a two-tiered market where lower end or more budget conscious consumers are holding back and high end consumers are continuing to purchase? It's possible, or it could also be a reflection of businesses just changing their strategy, essentially just pushing those units from one category to another. Some of you may have seen that last week we published our 2024 year in review document, which summarizes just some key trends across the industry last year. If you'd like to download it, there's a QR code on the screen here. And I think Kate will also be dropping a link in the chat. And one thing that was introduced in this report was the concept of MVPs within the data set. And these are clinics and providers that are in the 85th percentile of revenue per hour. And the goal here is to identify those top performers and to understand what they're doing well and what we might be able to learn from them. So with that in mind, we thought it might be helpful to take a look at the MVPs of 2025 year to date specifically to see what we can learn. And first, just a quick refresher here. Let's look at the data set in its entirety. We can see essentially flat overall revenue and private pay growth, very soft third-party unit growth or decline. And we see soft new patient appointments, of course, and new patient unit sales with strong existing patient sales. So that's the data set in its entirety. But if we break out the MVPs, again, the practices, then the clinics and providers in the 85th percentile, we can see what's different about this group versus everyone else in the data set. And what I find most interesting about this is that they are not immune to the macro trends. The new patient appointments are down in this group, but to a lesser degree. Third-party units are down essentially the exact same amount. However, if you read that year in review document, you'd know that these clinics rely much less on third party. So it's not having anywhere near the kind of impact. And most clearly here on this screen is the fact that the growth in the MVPs is overwhelmingly coming from existing patient sales. So the top performers are like offsetting the slowdown in the new patient business by maximizing their existing patient sales, which is a good thing. But the long-term health of the practice, we think, is still going to depend on reversing that trend of the slowdown in new patient appointments. Okay. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to go over a few.
Will.
My time's up. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and put my
Screenshot
summary slide
this,
up there.
everybody. Yeah.
Go ahead and screenshot this. And yeah, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to the next speaker.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Will. Okay, next I am happy to welcome Eric Sorensen. He is the president of Platinum Partners, and welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Chelsea and Will. First off, can you guys all just show the love in the chat for Chelsea and Will for putting this together? Put thank you in the chat if you guys are here and awake and listening to this. You've just got the bad news of what's happening in the industry. Are you okay if we talk about the bright side of this? A little bit of good news here on the horizon for all of you. And by the way, how many of you would like to not participate in all the bad news out there? I mean, if that's you, raise your hand, put in the chat, put me in the chat. Please light up the chat and show us the love here. It's going to help your speakers too for the rest of the event today. So we only have about 8 minutes, so we're going to go quick. And is it okay if I just go straight bottom line? Is that okay with you? And is it okay with you also if I tell you something that's not maybe just going to help you this month or next month, but it's going to help you 5 years, 10 years down the road? You're going to get a lot of tactics, probably tools and strategies over the next 45 minutes. But I really want to hopefully tell you something that would make it impactful. But before I do that, no, I'm going to be bottom line. As Chelsea said, I'm Eric Sorensen. I'm the co-founder of HereWorks, which I sold about a year ago, and I formed a company called Platinum Partners about 3.5 years ago, which essentially teaches practice owners like how to build a recession-proof business and how to grow by doing less, not more. And it's been just the light of my life. It's been so fun, and we have a lot of Platinum Partners on the call today, which is awesome. But I want you to know, like, I'm coming from a place of how bad I was in business. Like, I had two skills. One, I was hungry and I had hustle, but the reality is I was really good at figuring out how not to do business. How many of you are good at knowing what not to do? If that's you, put me in the chat. That is me 10,000 times over. I figured out exactly how not to run business. And it took me years to like finally have enough pain of the same things over and over again and never actually breaking through to the amount of revenue that I knew I was capable of, for me finally to realize that I have to change. It's not like I have to do more of what I was doing, because more of what I was doing would just grow my problems. It wouldn't grow my revenue. And I just wasn't that talented at business, to be honest with you. So knowing that, like, and last week I'm sitting in this place in Las Vegas, speaking on a stage in front of 5,000 crazy entrepreneurs with Tony Robbins and Prince EA and Russell Brunson and Trent Shelton and all these incredible speakers, saying, how in the world did I ever get here to this place? And my company's now approaching almost $100 million in revenue now since I like figured this out. So it's just crazy. And I don't tell you that to impress you. I tell you that to inspire you, that if you don't feel like you have the talent or the skill or the ability to overcome the challenges in your practice, you're not alone. I was a former practice owner for 3 years in Phoenix, so I get it, because I didn't know how to do it either. But there's really 3 strategies I think that'll be a game changer and help you build a recession-proof business. So when Chelsea came to me and said, hey, we're seeing these concerning trends, what's going on, will you speak? And I'm like, yeah. So she and I got on the call because I sent her an email saying, Chelsea, I don't know what you're talking about because I'm not seeing this. And she kind of laughed. She's like, well, what do you mean? This is how cool MVP is. She literally took the industry and then looked at like our Platinum Partner group and saw that there was a 19% difference between what the industry was doing and this group, which is 19% above the industry. And I just wanted to share you 3 things that are long-term strategies that I think will be a game changer and help you build a recession-proof business, so you can not elect to participate in any recession. So you can not elect to participate in downtime. So you can not elect in having a slow business, but you can actually do a few things that will be a game changer for you. And I want you to think about this. If you're worried about a month or 2, think about your mission. Is your mission strong enough? Because if you truly have a mission and you're driven by a strong why, you're thinking 5 years, 10 years down the road. And the truth is the patients haven't gone anywhere. You've heard it said that if we build it, they will come. Absolutely false, not true. If there's certain things that we can do, and then they will come, AKA the patients. So principle number 1 is this. If you want to be poor, trade time for money. If you want to be wealthy and have a successful business, trade money for time. So a lot of times when we're struggling in business, the question is like, okay, how am I going to overcome this? How am I going to improve this? That's the wrong question. And a lot of you, having been exposed to this industry now for 7 years, a lot of you are trading so much time for money. You're seeing patients all day long. You're also the CEO of the company. Maybe you're the janitor like I was in most of my businesses for the first 4 or 5 years as well, because I was doing everything. You're way too close to the situation to see the bigger picture. And so it's hard to see trends that are coming. Thank goodness for MVP that at least you have a dashboard now, you can see them early on versus 2 or 3 months after they happen and be just reactionary. But the question is not how or what should I do? The question is who. You really want to buy your time. You really want to ask, who can help me solve this problem? Who can help me with slow growth? Who can I turn to? And just getting around the right people that can help me grow. That's the one thing that I did. I finally it wasn't very smart, but I was smart enough to get around the right people that actually knew how to do this. And that's the only reason why I figured it out. And I only figured it out and I realized that once you figure it out, it's actually easy to build a successful business. But you know what's really hard? Building the person that will do it. So think about who can help me solve this problem? Who can help me with the challenges that I'm focusing on my practice? And how can I do things like, if you're seeing patients all day long, start seeing fewer patients so you can work more on the business, more in the business, on the business rather than in the business. Because the reality is if you're seeing patients all day long, the truth is you are not a business owner. You work for the business. And you really want to build a business that you don't grow to hate. And a great way to do that is to trade time for money and get burnt out over and over and over again. So that's principle number one. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is, as your business grows, your freedom should grow, not contract. Most of us are taught that in order for us to build a successful business, we've got to do more. I mean, if you want to double your revenue, double everything that you're doing right now, and you might just double your revenue. How many of you are up for that strategy? Please do not raise your hand. Nobody wants that. Everybody wants growth, but nobody wants the pain and the challenge of growth. And the alternative is like building that business, as I mentioned earlier, that you grow to hate. Now, how do you do that? It is actually by doing less, not more. It is actually by realizing, if you look at your practice, I would venture to say that anywhere from 70 to 90% of the things that you are doing on a day-to-day business aren't actually going to move the needle towards the thing you want to do. Whereas kind of the 80-20 Pareto principle, 20% of your actions will actually get 80% of your results. What if you were able to remove 80% of the things that are actually not moving the needle towards where you want to go in your business and focus on the 20%? Well, in order to do that, you have to be able to step back and be able to focus on the business, not so much in the business. Your organizations, your clinics need leaders, and you are the leader. And the speed and the attitude and the direction of the ship is the speed and the attitude and the direction of the captain. And when you are able to focus on the business, everything can change for you. So as your business grows and you need to think about, what things can I do to expand my freedom so I'm not the cog in the wheel? I'm not the challenge, the bottleneck in my business holding us back from growth. And this is the third principle that I want to teach you in just the last couple of minutes that I have, and that's this. This is so powerful, and I didn't believe this even like 7 or 8 years ago. And this is the one thing that I did that made everything change for me, and it's one thing that we focus on at Platinum Partners, that is invest more in yourself than you do in your business. I've now changed my tune. I now tell my employees to invest more in themselves than they do in my business. Because if they're better, if they understand that they can get a strategy that's better, if they're improved, if they're taking better actions, better inputs always create better decision makings, better outputs. And so that's the single greatest strategy you can do, is invest in yourself. You don't need to do more, because new results do not come from doing more. New results come from new actions. And the only way you're ever going to get results is that. Thank you, Chelsea, for that beautiful sound. And that hopefully that was like, hey, you're on the finish line. But last thing I'll say is, new results come from doing new things. In other words, new actions. You can't keep doing the same things, which is why if you invest in yourself, you're going to quickly discover what those new actions are and realize that, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't see these blind spots, and I cannot believe how much simpler it is to build a business that I don't grow to hate, but that expands my freedom. So hope that's helpful, guys. I know Chelsea's going to put contact information at the end here. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can actually just go to my website and click on me. And I did this for the first time ever, Chelsea. You like inspired me. I actually am going to personally take any call anybody wants to talk to about your specific business. So it's actually direct link to my calendar, which I never do. So anyways, thank you guys for listening, and let's go to the next one.
Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it. Okay, so with that, I am going to introduce our next presenter, who is Dan Quall. He is the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Fuel Medical. Thanks for being here, Dan.
Chelsea, thank you. I am going to share my screen here, and while I'm doing that, let me start by saying that I am very bullish on our industry and our profession. I think that we have some great futures ahead, but I think that we have to take pause and really take a look at some of the data and understand what it means. Some of my favorite days at work are calling Will and geeking out on the information that they have. So I'm going to approach that information from a little different spot. And I'm going to tell you that I think the changes that are taking place aren't one thing, it's many things. And I think Will identified some of it. I think we've got a macroeconomic situation in the market. It was an election year. I think that made people uneasy. They wanted to see what's happening. And we came out of the election thinking maybe it'd be a little smoother sailing. And what we're seeing is a little more bumpy road. So I think people, in fact, this morning in the news, consumer confidence is down a bit. So I think we've got that bump in the road, but there's some bigger things going on. And so let's go through some numbers, and let's talk about it from the standpoint of the overall market. This is overarching. By the way, to all my fuel friends out there who are listening, they gave me 8 minutes. And I know right now you're saying, if I can get done in 8 minutes on anything, that will be the eighth wonder of the world. But I'm going to make a stab at it. This first piece of data that you're looking at looks at the 2024 hearing aid unit sales. This is from HIA. And so you can take a look at the total volume up there at 5.5 million. You can see the VA, you can see the commercial, you can see the growth was at 5.8. And that's what I want you to really focus on, is that growth number. Because as we look down and we break it into channels, we say, where did that business come from? We can take a look at the VA. We can see that it's at 16.2% of the channel, but it's down 5% over year. If you add in that 5.8 that it should have grown, it's down 6.3. If we look at the managed care, by the way I calculate is made up of all of your true hearings, those types, the TPAs, but it also includes all the Medicaid, which is about 6% of that 25. So you can see that it grew 6.4, so it outperformed the market. Retail outperformed the market by 2.1. Independents underperformed at 1.1. So what we see is that graph. Well, let's take a look at it in a little better way, maybe more visually. And so you can see that when we look at the fastest growing channel this last year, it was indeed commercial. And you have to ask, what's driving that? Well, in the commercial bucket, here's who exists. The biggest player is Costco. And of that 27%, Costco by itself is 20%. They are selling almost 1 million units a year, and they have over almost 600 locations now across the country. They are a major player in the marketplace, and this is what the other part is made up of. Some of your larger retailers. So it goes to Beltone, it goes to Miracle Ear, it goes to Connex. It's a Phonex Sonova organization, and so anybody that really drives units, through a contract, or they're primarily doing one type of hearing aid through it. The independent side is made up of all of us, all the people that are on a day-to-day basis, going out and trying to grow that part of the business. And we are the fastest shrinking, and it has been going on for a while. Now, it's one thing to take a look at a point like this. It says at the end of the year, what does it look like? So I was working with with one of my colleagues, Brian Grant. We went and we delved in and said, what did it look like when we look at quarterly data? And so this kind of starts to look at this trend idea. So we start at 2023 over on the left side, and you can see the independent channel started at about 28.5, 29. And when we got done, it was at 28. There's that 1% loss that we had in the market growth. Take a look at retail, started at 26, gone up to 28. It saw a 2% growth. And then we look at managed care, 25.1. When it got done, obviously, it was up a little bit over that. VA, it's down. It's not really a big factor for us. So the one thing I note in this is I see this trend in the retail side. And I have to stop, and when we talk about new patients being down, we have to stop and say, what is bringing new patients into our industry? What is driving people through the door of our clinics? And I think that what we're seeing, where I say it's not one thing, it's many things. I think another piece of this is that we are seeing a shift in consumer behavior. I think that over a period of years, not last year by itself, but if we took this trend and went back further, we would start to see that behavioral economics comes into play. And how do people approach the industry? And what this data is telling, at least me, whether you share it or not, and we'll create strategies off of it, is that people are now being anchored in the industry via some of the activities that happen in the commercial side, primarily, or possibly Costco. Costco, they walk in, they see what happened. There's an expectation on price. Then they go to the internet, and guess what they see? There's more reinforcement on what I call a retail model versus a medical model. And so I think one of the things that the challenges for us ahead is, how do we take our story of care, growth? We know that the independent channel has an unprecedented, positive outcome with patients. But I think our story at the front line and how patients are finding us is changing quite a bit as time goes on. And I think it is not, it's really, and now my fuel friends are going to laugh again because I get to work in my apples and oranges. What is being offered in the retail channel to me is really a different treatment plan than what is offered primarily in the independents. What the independents are providing is an apple. Yes, it's a fruit, but it is got all kinds of services, guidance, care going on with the patient as they move forward. What's being offered primarily through the managed care and through the places like Costco is a real transactional event. It is, I have a hearing loss, I get a test, I get a hearing aid, everything's done. Patients are on a journey, and our job is to take them on that journey. And as they shift, as they change, as they grow, help them into the best technology in hearing aids, assistive devices, and help them maybe into the next technology, which might be cochlear implants. That's our job. And I think being the guides in that journey is going to be what differentiates us. But the consumers still have to jump in. And I think we have to understand that they are now being driven in a different way than they were years ago. And I will say that the baby boomers that came in and are started this growth that we see, 5.8 last year, that's great growth. The baby boomers at the tail end of this phase are going to be different consumers. There's another thing that got introduced October of 2 years ago, over the counter. And as soon as we bring over the counter into the dialogue, then all of a sudden we start to say to the consumers, hey, it's a commodity. Jump online, see what you can find. And so our people are anchored with different information. And I think it's incumbent upon us to educate them. Now, this slide is a slide I got from Chelsea and Will from a talk that they did. And take a look at what's happening with patient referrals. And take a look at your newspaper print going down. Managed care is relatively flat. Direct mail is down. Physicians is up, right? What's driving that? And online. Take a look at the online growth and see what's happening there. So people are finding us different. Now, be careful about this because we're saying this is physician data, right? This is the physician numbers are up, but this is a percentage, not a total number. It could be that everything else has dropped off so far that it's the percentage of physician is up without really growing the physician number of referrals. So I think you can see right here the shift in how patients are finding us. And I think we have to recognize that that is taking place. Short term, independence. I mean, I really think that we got to take a look at, what is the anchor and anchoring price. I think Medicare Advantage right now has a trust problem. I think that that Medicare has had a lot of bad press lately, and I think that that's starting to slide, and that's why we're seeing them down. Long term, I think we have to recognize that how people are finding us changing, and that we have to expand our treatment plans, and that may mean over the counter have to become a part of it because those people are entering the market about 8-9 years earlier. We should be the ones guiding them. It should not be up to them to come into the market and then find their way down the road. So interesting times, great opportunities. I look forward to talking to you more about that.
Thanks so much, Dan. I definitely owe a couple people at Fuel a few $100 because you did a great job there staying within your time limit. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to introduce our next panelist, who is Nick Fitzgerald, and he is the president of Odd SEO. Thanks so much for being here, Nick.
Hi, everybody. I will endeavor to be the first guy to hit 8 minutes or less. We will see if that can actually happen because I like to blab. So hopefully you can see everything here. So like Chelsea said, I'm Nick Fitzgerald. I own a digital marketing agency called Odd SEO, and we specialize in hearing health. I personally have been a search engine optimization expert for almost 20 years. I've optimized for some of the biggest organizations in the world, and now I'm focused exclusively in this market. So I'm going to talk a lot about search specifically, as well as trends that I'm foreseeing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the positives, right? So we know that, and I know from talking to Chelsea, the digital referral channel is actually growing while some others are shrinking. So we know that things are improving in that regard. One of the things that was very helpful to this overall, like Dan mentioned, was OTC hearing aid marketing. Frankly, over the last couple of years, we could see a direct correlation with a slow, steady increase in interest in hearing devices online as a result of that. And then And then all of a sudden, Apple comes in October 28th of last year, and they push Apple AirPods Pro 2 with their OTC functionality. And we saw an immediate bump in interest in hearing devices online. And it's maintained at about 25% bump. So, you can measure that a few different ways, but it's roughly around 25% increase in interest in the market just because of Apple, basically. So that's it's a really solid number. What I anticipate is that will wane somewhat, but Apple's a behemoth. They're going to keep it going as long as they can, as long as they stay in the market. So that should be interesting. One negative is that we have noticed, we work with hundreds of practices, and across our data sets, we've really started to notice that some current events have impacted conversion rates. The conversion being, somebody comes to your website and calls you or fills out your contact form. That would be a conversion. We're noticing that even though someone might have an increase in traffic from the search engines, or maybe even is staying the same, they are not seeing as many conversions, or at least from a percentage basis, and that usually indicates a market sentiment shift. So like Dan was saying, and Will and everybody, I mean, there are some current events that have impacted things. So flu season, this is the worst flu season on record. January being, we're looking at the MVP data from this year. Flu season, the drops almost correlate perfectly with some of the data on that side. But then we also have economic factors. We have the presidential election year. We have all sorts of things that are probably affecting consumer sentiment in that regard. So, but I expect that to be temporary. Conversion rate suppression like that is usually based off short-term events. Artificial intelligence, big buzzword, right? Over the last few years, it really hasn't had the impact in this market that some people thought it would. There just hasn't been the adoption by, frankly, the baby boomers, right? And baby boomers are a big generation for us. Gen Z and millennials have really adopted it, but 71% of baby boomers have never touched it, and the other 29% don't use it as often as the younger people. So search and social and YouTube and various, they're still the primary digital media to reach them. Apple Intelligence is interesting. I'm really watching closely on this. iPhones, if you have an iPhone, one of the newer models, you might find that you have beta Apple Intelligence on your phone. It's not fully featured yet, but effectively what Apple's done is they've partnered with ChatGPT and Bing, which are kind of one and the same almost, in order to create a product that is native on the phone, and then goes out to ChatGPT when you have an inquiry or whatnot. But I'm expecting that they're probably the only people that will be able to grab market share from Google, significant market share from Google, and I'm excited to see that because they own 58% of the cell phone market, and currently Google has 95% of mobile search in the US. So only way to go is down. So that should be really interesting. But as it stands, Google maintains market dominance in the US. In January 2024, they had 87.46% market share. January 2025, it's 87.34%. It really didn't shift around much in the last year. A lot of people were thinking that Google was going to lose their dominance, but what basically happened was there were a few months where some of that market share was pulled away from Google, and then all of a sudden Google adapted and people came back, right? It's really hard to break that search habit, to break that search engine. If somebody really likes Google, they just default to it. And if they don't like the user experience somewhere else, or it's not what they expect, they are going to come right back. So that's what we see a lot. Bing only has 7.38% of the search market share. And like I said, they work with ChatGPT. And I'm expecting that they will actually see an increase. The AI overviews on Google, a lot of people were worried they were going to be harmful, because when you ask a quick, question or maybe even a specific, even a deep question, sometimes you'll get an AI overview at the top of the search engine that says, hey, here's the answer and here's a bunch of information, right? So a lot of people were worried that was going to steal traffic from practices. It hasn't negatively impacted this space, because only 18% of searches for local hearing health actually have AI overviews on them, and they're primarily not commercial queries. So, you know, we don't care when someone types "what is a hearing aid" in, right? Their intention is they're really top funnel. They don't have a clue. We want somebody that's looking for a service provider, and when they're looking, those AI overviews are not intercepting. So we haven't really seen a negative impact there. It's actually generally been positive because searchers are able to find what they want quicker, but even more so for us, you know, Google does over 3,000 algorithm updates per year, and every time they've been doing them, they've really been focused on expertise and authority, right? And authority is one thing, but in this field, you guys are the experts. So what happens is they do an algorithm update and they get rid of a bunch of junk results that aren't really very helpful. But we see that in a lot of cases, the practices are still doing pretty well. So we're really excited about that. Google disruption. I wanted to talk about this just because Google is really hard to disrupt, but they lost their antitrust case last year. So a future trend, if they can't fight it, and they are trying to fight it, they're appealing, they're probably going to drag it out in court for years. So we're not going to see them broken up as a company probably for 3 to 5 years or more. But I do expect that that will likely end up happening, and they'll be broken up and we'll be given more options. So that's obviously an existential threat. And then, as I mentioned, Apple is too. I'm hoping that Apple can grab some mobile market share from them, and that'll make Bing a little more relevant. So what do you need to do? Continue to leverage local SEO, right? Local SEO, you need to be there when people are searching for you in your locality. And I'm not the guy that did it. Darn it. Okay. Well, one thing that's really important, make sure that that your branding is stronger than ever, right? We now know from some Google leaks last year that branding is more important than ever. They monitor everything through Chrome. If you use Chrome, they're using that data to figure out how you like a website, right? And as well as, you know, if the branding is good, and that'll elevate you. So make sure you're different, stand out. Don't do the same crummy website as everybody else that's a template. You know, is it unique? Does it have a great user experience? These are all things that you have to tackle now in a post Google leak world. So I didn't quite make it. My apologies. But I'm Nick. If you guys have additional questions, I mean, like everyone here, I had to edit out so much. Always happy to answer questions. Just shoot me an email or give me a call.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate it. Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Cliff. He's an audiologist and founder of the Hearing App Network. So he was not actually able to be here with us in person. He's on a flight to Australia. So he recorded a video in advance for us. So I'm going to go ahead and share that now. Even he didn't keep it to 8 minutes. It's like 8 minutes and 24 seconds. But I'm going to go ahead and play this now. And Kate or somebody let me know if you guys can't hear it.
Hey guys, what's going on? Sorry I could not be there in person with you guys, but I did want to record a video here really quick because when Chelsea reached out to me saying, hey Cliff, new patient appointments are down like 19% year over year, I was like, what the heck are you talking about? Surely that can't be happening to us, and it's happening to us as well out here in Phoenix inside of my clinic. So I wanted to dig around and try to get to the bottom of it. Now, new hearing aid sales apparently are down 9% from a private pay perspective, and TPA sales are down 25%. So I really don't think that it's the TPAs causing this. If it was, we would see a significant increase in TPA sales. But, you know, maybe it's a couple other things. So first and foremost, I don't really think it's macroeconomic factors, even though that we've been talking about inflation, even though we've been talking about potential tariffs and stuff like that. I don't think that hearing aids are elastic enough of a good for people to be freaked out and not treat their hearing loss. So there's a lot of data out there showing the inelasticity of hearing aids. No matter what, people are going to end up treating their hearing loss. You know, it could be Costco. I mean, Costco could be making a really big push, but one would make the assumption that if it was Costco, it would be because they released a new hearing aid. They have not released any new hearing aids here recently. There was some talk about, you know, them coming out with a competitor to using the Sennheiser brand, using a competitor to the Phonak Audeo Sphere hearing aids, but that hasn't really panned out as of yet. Are people postponing treatment, waiting for that? I guess it's possible. I just don't really see that happening. And it could be OTC or something else, right? OTC in the form of maybe Apple AirPods Pro 2. So basically, I just wanted to take a deep dive into my YouTube channel, see what people were saying, and see what analytics were telling me. First and foremost, from a comment perspective, no one has been like overly saying that like something has happened to where people are now shifting gears and going somewhere else. I haven't seen more people saying that they're going to Costco. I haven't seen more people say they're going with OTC hearing aids. I haven't seen more people say that they're going to a different country to procure devices, like people go and get medical care in other countries and then come back to the United States. So I don't think it's anything like that. If I look at the data on my YouTube channel though, you can see that, you know, there's nothing crazy going on with my most popular Costco video. This video has like 350,000 views or something like that. The most views it gets per day is like 30 views per day. So that's not a we would see a spike if it was something that was having a significant downturn in the private pay market. Apple AirPods Pro 2, this was a hearing aid that I had published prior to the announcement of the hearing aid feature. So we saw a nice big spike there right around the announcement, a little after the announcement there. But it's fizzled out. I mean, we see that, you know, going back down to probably, you know, 50 views or less per day on that video. Look at my AirPods Pro 2 hearing aid tutorial. Again, that saw a spike when I first released it, but then it's gone down and you know, it's got a slow, steady view rate there. This one here is my detailed review of the OTC feature for the AirPods Pro 2. You can see again a nice spike. It's kind of fizzled out. It has a little bit more traction, I would say, than the other videos. But again, I don't think that that's causing a global, like, it doesn't tell us that, you know, throughout the United States that people are treating with OTC versus treating with prescription. And this one right here is the video that I had published on April 1st, my April Fool's video telling people that there was Apple hearing aid that pissed off a lot of people, which makes me feel really good. So, but again, you can see that that gets what, like 75 views per day. I think that it got the spike because people thought that that was a review of the AirPods Pro 2 feature, and it wasn't. So it got another nice round of negative comments on that video. A couple things we might be able to take away from this is that maybe there was some, you know, a group of individuals who would have treated their hearing loss with prescription devices, but they decided not to because the Apple devices came out. And so they're just kicking the can down the road. They're trying the Apple AirPods Pro 2, and if and when they don't work for them, they're going to end up going the prescription route. I don't think that it's impacting existing patients because I don't think anyone's going to be going from their hearing aids back to AirPods Pro 2. But if it's not, you know, any of these things that we've talked about, what could it potentially be? Well, I mean, it could be nothing. I mean, it could just be, you know, the stars aligned in the wrong way or something like that. It could just be too early to tell. We don't have enough information at this point. It could be an unknown variable that we just have not identified, or this could be the start of the end for all of us, right, for private practice. I've been actually talking about that concept a fair amount at conferences. I actually gave a talk at AAA a couple years ago talking about the death of audiology. Because when we're not focused on quality and we're focused on quantity, anything that significantly impacts the quantity of people who comes in for treatment basically screws us. I then wanted to go and look and see, well, how have I not been feeling this? How was the first time that I noticed this when Chelsea reached out to me and said, hey, Cliff, your new patient appointments are down significantly from what they were this time last year. So I took a look at the analytics in MVP. And so while I can see that our new patient appointments were down 16.7% and our opportunities were down 9.6% year over year for the beginning part of the year here, hearing aid revenue has been up 38.6%, payments have been up 30.3%, units are up 31.8%, average selling price is up 5.2%, revenue is up 28.7%, and non-hearing aid revenue is up 16.2%. So how is it that we just haven't been feeling it really inside of the clinic? Well, we focus completely on a quality game versus a quantity game. So even if we do have a reduction in new patients who comes in, we spend a ton of time on training to make sure that we're all converting at a really high level. I think that the future of audiologic care is that if you're going to be in private practice, you have to focus on quality, not quantity. I think that you're going to have to make sure that your audiologists and hearing instrument specialists are super at converting. I'm not talking 60% conversion, I'm talking 90% conversion. And that's what we train to inside of our clinic. We have a target goal of 90% conversion rate inside of the clinic. Do we always hit it? No, we don't always hit it, but that means that we could get less patients in and we keep improving our conversion skills and we're gonna feel it less. We also don't do a bundled thing where we have to rely on new patients coming in to still generate a significant amount of revenue. I believe in a hybrid model where we charge them like bundled at the beginning, but then we also charge them as time goes on too. I think that, again, if you're gonna offer a quality service, you should be charging for that and in order to keep your revenue steady. I also think that you need to focus on more revenue per patient, which means you probably are going to need to increase pricing for your private pay patients. So if you get less patients in the door, you're still making the same or more money. The hardest thing to do, and I would consider myself at least a decent marketer, considering that I refer people into clinics all over the country through the Hearing Up Network. Getting new patients in the door is the hardest thing that we do. Treating people is relatively easy. Converting people, as long as you train on it, is relatively easy. Getting someone to be willing to sit in front of you when they have a $1,500 option at Costco is extremely difficult to do, and best practices are the best way that I have found to actually do it. So what I would say is this: if this does happen to be the beginning of the end for private practice, the ones that are going to be okay are the ones that are focused on quality of care, that are focused on high treatment acceptance rates because they train like crazy inside of the clinic, and they're giving an excellent patient experience to their patients while they're in there. And if you can do this, then you're going to be able to weather a lot of these storms or be one of the few clinics standing, the few private practices standing when all is said and done and Costco and OTC take all of our market share. So that's my insight for you guys. Hopefully it was beneficial. I'm actually anxious to watch everyone else and what they present on when I get back from Australia. But until then, guys, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out.
Excellent. Well, we thank Dr. Cliff for sharing those insights with us, even though he couldn't be here live. And okay, that brings us to our final panelist, which is Ollie Luke. He is the co-founder and chief marketing officer at Orange and Gray. And you have 8 minutes, and then I'll have the final minute, Ollie. So thank you so much. Let's see.
Sorry, my bad. Always one, right? Thanks for putting this together. And look, I'll share my view in terms of what I'm seeing. And I think we're in this kind of trifecta right now between these three things. And the first I'm going to kick off with is this. And it may be controversial because I know we've kind of spoken about this a little more, but I'll give my view is because we always see these 5 stages of awareness of how people make buying decisions and where they sit in the market. Predominantly, this most aware category is where people are ready, motivated, know who they want to choose, and are ready to move forward. These are where we need to appear naturally, but these product-aware, solution-aware, problem-aware group, this is where has been our bread and butter in the past. This is where we can educate, we can be the thought leaders on hearing help, hearing care, hearing aids, and naturally educate people that they need hearing care and not hearing aids and need solutions like ours. And from a Google perspective, it's meant that when people search a question, we want to be in the top results, we want to take them to a piece of content to educate them, then we either want them to complete an inquiry form and start a conversation with us, or we want to start to build a relationship, build rapport, and be top of their mind when they're ready to move forward. One thing that we observed back in November is something very funky started happening across all of the 70+ practices that we work with across North America. And we started seeing this spike of impressions. So we've seen huge impressions and a downwards trend of clicks. Essentially, this is we're showing up, but we're getting less clicks. So what is the reason for this? Because this isn't one practice. This is happening across all practices to different scales. And as Nick alluded to before, this was AI overviews that Google were rolling out throughout the course of last year. And in November was really where they started to hit us pretty hard. And what it's meaning is, although people are still searching questions and looking for education around the hearing challenges that they're having concerns with, previously, we were getting the traffic to educate those people and guide them towards a decision. What we're seeing now is things like this, where Google are looking at all the sources that provide content using AI to quickly spin an answer, to provide an answer to the question that the individual is searching. And then the individual is getting the answer they want, getting the education they want without having to click anywhere. It's a 0-click experience. And then when they finally go, okay, I need to visit an audiologist, a hearing care professional, that's where they're looking more direct, and we haven't won them in the education battle. We win them kind of down here, but it's a difficult battle because we don't control the education like we used to. So when you see people like Gary Vee coming out with audacious statements like Google search is fundamentally dead within the next 7 years, it becomes a little interesting. Now, I have a slightly different stat that I pulled than what Nick shared before, but you know, potatoes, in terms of Google having the majority of the market share. What is interesting, and I think this is going to get more and more interesting, we know ChatGPT search got rolled out in October 31st with a Chrome extension for all their Plus members. On December 19, 2024, they made it public so that anybody can use ChatGPT search. It's become my day-to-day browser rather than Google right now, and a lot of people I know are using this. The boomer trend, the older population, probably not. And then similarly, we've got what Nick mentioned regarding the Department of Justice going after Google's search monopoly, encouraging, if not forcing them to sell Chrome, with probably the biggest buyer if the market, if it does go to market, being Microsoft, who is one of the biggest financial investors into OpenAI and ChatGPT. So very much the changing of the guards are very interesting dynamics going on from a Google perspective right now. But it doesn't surprise me, going back to this kind of funky stuff that's going on, that naturally there's less people being educated, therefore them leading to come to us rather than Costco, rather than convenience, is naturally occurring and very, very interesting. Second big dynamic, and it's the elephant in the room that we all like to pretend, in my view, that it's not a big threat to us, and it absolutely is, which is the Apple dynamic. And what was interesting, when they rolled their TV commercial out on this and put it on YouTube, it shot to 51 million views. And we've seen some of the biggest search trends in our industry. So if we look for the term hearing aid in the US over the past 20 years, since 2004, and this is what the chart looks like. Here was COVID, where all of a sudden hearing loss becomes slightly less interesting. This was when OTC was announced in 2022. And this humongous spike was when Apple launched their products. We're now seeing Apple buy ads for hearing aid related traffic across the country. And based on the Google ads that we run for a handful of practices, we're seeing CPCs go up, and the costs, because it is an auction. And when Apple roll into the market, it's going to be a very expensive auction. And then if you just take AirPods as a brand, like they're a huge brand as a standalone company. They're bigger than Spotify, eBay, Airbnb. They're huge. And this is the stat that always makes me feel a little uncomfortable, is what Apple spent on just research and development in a 12-month period was nearly $31 billion. That's bigger than the GDP of Senegal. That's more than Resound and Starkey's combined revenue in that same time period. Like they can play pretty aggressively. And if you follow what Apple have always done, they launch the software and then they follow it with the firmware to complement the software. They launched iOS 18 with this hearing aid functionality. And it seems like 2025 is the year where they'll launch the AirPod Pro 3s. The first AirPod Pros, 2019, the second AirPod Pros, 2022. 2025 seems like this is the anniversary of that 3-year milestone when they will launch it. And we're seeing the rumors start to occur. Based on my reading, it seems that September, fall, where they typically do their big product launches, is where this will occur. But based on what Mark Gurman's saying, one of the best and most well-known correspondents for everything Apple, like they're looking for big changes, sonic improvements, and know that what they'll be developing is firmware to complement the software that they've developed. So expect these AirPod Pros to be good. Like the new Beats that have just come out, that Apple own that company, they have 45-hour battery life. So many of the things that previously made AirPods not a good solution are going to be addressed. And that big downwards trend towards basic or entry-level technology, it's no surprise that's downwards trending, because if I had let's say I'm in that part of the market, I'd be playing with Apple right now rather than running towards a prescription. And I think I probably would end up at prescription. Final thing, I'll be super quick on this one, this boomer boom. We've spoken about it, but like we've got to accept the generational shift between the silent generation to the boomers is unlike anything else. And we know we're here in terms of 70-plus-year-old silent generation on the decline and 70-plus-year-old boomers on the decline. But the big thing that we need to consider here is the mindset of somebody who was a silent generation is dramatically different to a boomer. Silent generation got brought up during the Great Depression, got brought up during World War II, highly frugal, biggest users of coupons in the country. Baby boomers are completely the opposite, got brought up during huge prosperity. The US dollar became the world currency reserve in 1944. 1 in 5 is a millionaire. They're the most affluent generation in the world. And unlike the silent generation, they make their buying decisions by doing their due diligence and research online. They're not just looking for the trusted high street brand. They're not just looking to go to who's convenient and who shows up in the newspaper. They're looking to choose who is the right person to fit towards their unique needs and challenges. They invest in experience. They invest in health and wellness. They don't just want a solution. They want somebody that aligns to their preferences and buy-in decisions. So boomers are coming. Don't just do the same thing that used to work for these people, because the target is completely shifted on what needs to be done in order to attract the boomers. Final thing, I don't think in terms of what needs to be done, this isn't a band-aid solution. This isn't do a little bit different on Google, spend money on ads. The big thing that I see most practices missing is a very much joined up marketing strategy. Don't be focusing on tactics, focus on strategy. Is everything complementing each other to attract the types of patients you want, prove you're the right option for them, build a never-ending body of evidence, and do all the right things to become locally iconic in your community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ollie. I really appreciate you being here. And thank you to all of our panelists for being here. Kate is going to pull up a slide really quick. We have one slide that's got all of our panelists with their contact info. We're going to send that to you guys in an email after the event with a link to this recording in case you'd like to watch it again or share it with anyone. And so I'm happy to take questions here. By the way, all of our panelists can stay on for a few minutes. So if you have a question and you haven't asked it yet in the Q&A, please feel free to do so. But before we get to that, I just want to wrap up by saying that kind of no matter what's happening with the macro economy, with consumer sentiment, even, things in our industry specifically, the most important thing that you can do is understand the health of your business in real time. And the only way to really do that is with a BI tool like MVP. MVP is going to take the enormous amount of data that you generate by running your practice day in and day out, enrich and transform that data, and feed it back to you in the form of insights about what you're doing well and where you specifically have opportunities to grow. So I want to encourage anyone who's not already using MVP to schedule a demo so you can see for yourself what this powerful tool can do for your practice. And if you schedule a demo this week, we've got a QR code up here, or you can go directly to our website. We'll send you an MVP Yeti mug or a $25 coffee gift card. You can, again, just scan the QR code or visit us on our website to do that. So thanks everyone for being here. If you have to hop off, I understand. But if you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free. You can pop those in the Q&A at the bottom. I have a question here that really kind of almost any of our panelists could answer. So I'll let you guys decide if you'd like to take a stab at answering it. But it sounds like a couple people are interested in that slide that Will showed around the suffering of the basic and entry-level technology tiers, and wondering if you guys think that is the entry of OTC. A couple people asked that same question a couple different ways. So happy to hear any of our panelists' thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable hypothesis for sure. It's kind of hard to say with any certainty. But yeah, I think that definitely represents the lower end of the market. And you could even throw in the drop-in managed care into that same kind of category, lower end segment of the market overall kind of trending downward. Those both of those categories could be impacted by something like a really good low cost over-the-counter product that ostensibly Apple is providing.
So a couple of things on OTC that is interesting. So I didn't have time, obviously, 5.5 million units last year. It's estimated that the OTC market last year was probably somewhere around 750,000 units. Return rates somewhere in the 30%, so pretty high. But I think, when you take a look at that as a number, that's almost unit to unit, it's a little under little over the 10% mark, right? I mean, that would, if those were here prescription products, we would have seen a jump in those numbers. So people are migrating there, but it's a different age group. We know that they're younger. They're coming into the market and starting to explore at 58. And so they're going online. And I love the the data from our two gentlemen that looked really at what's happening online. I think that is a huge impact how people are searching. And I think OTC made it okay now for hearing aids to be a commodity. It's an orange, right? It's transactional. I have a hearing loss, I get a test, I buy an OTC, or I buy a hearing aid. And so suddenly that search goes on. The other interesting thing from insiders who have been in the OTC, the majority of those OTC units were $300 or less, probably 60 to 70%. So the first explorers, and Apple falls into this world, are going there. And if my worry with OTC, first of all, let's talk about, we haven't even talked about OTC in the managed care world. I think you're going to see some managed care companies come out with some OTC products that they get, free through their Medicare Advantage plan. But once those people have entered into the market, because that's what we're talking about. How do people come in? They either come in through, the independents, they come through their doctor, they're coming through online. How do they find us? And if they find product at the OTC level and jump into the market, that's going to cement a behavior that's going to continue, to have them look, online. So I think we're back to, what Dr. Cliff was saying. We got to educate. I think we have to differentiate our treatment plans. I think we need to let consumers know that we can get product and we can provide services at the same. If you're trying to create the orange that's happening at Costco, I can create that. But I think an Apple is a better option, and I think following is better, and that's the educational issue that we're going to have to deal with as we move forward.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. Okay, here's a great question that I'd love to hear from Nick or Ollie or both on, but is there a marketing strategy that can put your business name in the AI search summary?
You want to take that one, Nick?
Up to you, my friend. I mean, I guess, yes. I mean, it depends which AI you're talking about, right? So as we kind of mentioned, ChatGPT and Bing / Microsoft, they're kind of tied together at the hip, right? So if you want to be in ChatGPT, you need to be optimizing for Bing, and then there's a few other things to look at there too. So a lot of them, and most of these AI, when it comes to web-based search, they have an AI and then they use someone else's index to go search. So Bing, Google, so if you use Gemini, you're using Google. So it really depends on which AI, but it's frankly it isn't overly difficult because they're just kind of marrying themselves to the existing technologies in a lot of ways. So Ali, you want to jump in? Is there anything I missed?
No, I think it's the same foundations, right? If you want to be found on ChatGPT, you've got to do the same things to be found anywhere else. It's show up as the logical and best option for the individual and prove you're the best option.
Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, next question is, does anyone here have speculation on the form factor and or price of the AirPod Pro 3? And do we know anything about whether they're going to have more advanced hearing aid features? I saw the noise cancellation information you shared, Ollie, but does anyone know what they're going to look like?
No, is the short answer. I think it's all speculation at this stage. Given Apple's history of always launching a software first and then the hardware to complement the software, you can expect the hearing health features that got rolled into the AirPod Pro 2s 2 years after the actual technology was released, the firmware is released. You can expect the firmware that Apple launch next be built to complement this software update. So I imagine they'll perform better, and some of the things will be addressed like battery life, comfort, now that they're actually making something to maximize those hearing health features. But yeah, it's all sheer speculation at this stage.
Okay, great. Thank you. Here's a question. Anybody have any insights on why physician referrals might be up in that MVP slide that Dan shared?
Let's first be very cautious. That doesn't mean physician referrals are up. Will and I did not dig in and take a look at total numbers. we had a discussion. Actually, I got the slide from you, Chelsea. So it says that the percentage of people that responded to us were physician referrals. It could have been the exact same number, but we saw drops in the other categories that caused physician numbers to be higher. So I'm not saying that physician referrals are necessarily up. I'm just saying that they are a more important part of bringing the people in. That is still a channel out there that is part of what's going on. And then the biggest, fastest growing one is obviously the online situation, is your electronic, digital presence. And so I think that you saw direct mail was down. You saw all those other things had declined as a percentage of where new people come from. So if you're asking yourself, where do my people come from? More are coming from physicians, but it doesn't necessarily mean the referrals are up. And I think that that's the next, whenever you do these things, it's never about the answers, it's about the questions, right? And every time we look at something, it leads to the next question, which is, reason to call Will and say, hey, let's dig in. What do you think about this?
Yeah, and I had a slide that I had to cut, unfortunately, due to for timing, obviously. And one, we did look at some referral source stuff, and Dan's correct. Physician referral as a source of new patients actually is trending downwards. It's still a big category as a percentage of the total, but it is one of the sources of patients that is trending downward that we can see that more or less mirrors the overall decline in new patients coming into practices starting after the first quarter last year. With the other big one being managed, like what we can identify as insurance or managed care specific referrals. Those are down much more significantly. But yeah, physician referrals still a big source, but somewhat trending down in recent times. So we need to give it some more time and look at it later.
Yep. Great. Okay. This next question. Is it your contention that AirPod Pro 2 are beating out more traditional hearing aid styles that are coming in the OTC market? Like, is Apple winning in the OTC category because they're a trusted and known brand? Anybody have an opinion on that?
I have an opinion, but no stats.
Okay.
And my opinion would be Apple will smash everyone out the water. Given the price of OTC devices, given the price of what the AirPods are, and given when they launched the AirPod Pro 3s, I think they'll win that market. Is my personal opinion without any stats to back it up.
Yeah. One conundrum with AirPods too is it's the same technology that like my kids are buying. So in terms of who's buying them and then using them as hearing aids or OT, that's kind of pretty murky, right? So.
But again,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
if you look at it, who's going to buy? So in today's world, the people we see in our hearing aid offices at age 67 buying AirPod Pros, I don't see that. But do I see the 50-year-old trying them who's just starting to have problems? Yep. Do I see them reaching for that first and saying, now it's okay for this to be a commodity, right? I don't have to go see my healthcare provider. I'm going to start the journey on my own. And that's why I think it's just so critical that Audiology not ignore the OTC. They need to be in the conversation. And I think the next thing that we need to develop when I talked about long-term strategies, we have to create long-term strategies that connect us as healthcare professionals with the patients where they are at home. This means that we have to, we go to CES and we see what's being developed. Every medical avenue is creating, how do I monitor my patients from a distance? And I think that if we can have some way of hooking and tethering ourselves to the patient so that we can monitor as they change, as we see their needs supply, we can get the right answer, the right product at the right time for the right situation by the right professional. I think we have to be able to understand where they are on that journey. And so we have to insert audiology into the OTC. I think it's a big mistake for audiologists to say, oh, they're not asking for it in my clinic. I think you're missing the boat. I think 10 years from now, you say, I should have been developing that channel.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question. And I'm assuming this was kind of related to some of the data that Will was sharing around, again, like the premium and advanced technology tiers kind of surging relative to the more entry-level tiers. But how valuable do you guys think it would be on the marketing side to target private pay specifically or high-income individuals?
Yeah, I mean, very important. Every time we've ever looked at the private pay segment of the market and try to look at, household incomes and things like that, I think it's pretty clear that It's generally speaking higher income folks that are coming into our practices, because that's probably more true now than it ever has been, given the low cost options that exist out there for patients. So yes, so I think from a marketing standpoint, targeting folks with either high income or, you know, high net worth is, from a premium and advanced private pay hearing aid sales perspective, probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, Ollie, Nick, go ahead.
Sure, we're going to say the same darn thing here, Ali. Go ahead.
Oh, who knows? It's great. Great to hear from both of you.
I think you've got to have specificity on the types of patients you want to work with. Historically, we put a pin in a map, drawn a circle, and said anybody that has a hearing challenge, we will help. The market is of size and scale right now that if you're saying you're for everyone, you're for nobody, and you're just going to get washed away. Have specificity on the types of patients you want. And the cleaner that is, the more you can then write the message in, build the website, look like the business that is the natural solution for those types of patients, and then build the evidence to prove that you help people like them to achieve the outcomes they're looking for. They'll struggle to look past you. You will stand out directly to those individuals and build category of one status.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, and I think you know, in the modern age, when you've got you know, digital ads that can target people by their demographics and specific geographies and you know, all of that, you can easily go after those people. So it's really, what is your strategy individually?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Ollie. Okay, this question is, and again, I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts on this, and we might have a variety of responses, but based on what you guys have seen, do you think patients will return in March?
Yes.
Care to elaborate?
I mean, yeah, the weather should be nicer. If whatever these unhelpful transient issues, like hopefully transient issues around macroeconomics and political instability, things like that, hopefully that's better. So I mean, I guess that's a big if, but you know, the weather should be nicer. And the flu, hopefully the flu numbers should be better. And yeah, and I share, I think, Dan, your initial statement, you're bullish on the market. I think there's a huge segment of patients that are looking for high-end hearing care, and independent hearing care practices are the place that provide that, and will continue to do so. So no, I think I'm optimistic for the future.
Okay.
Agree. I agree.
Great. Again, happy to have anyone answer this one. What factors do you think are impacting the reduction in TPA referrals? Maybe Will, you want to go first? Because I know there's some clarification around like our data set versus like the stuff that Dan showed and all of that. But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we see a clear downward trend, particularly this year, of managed care business overall just being down considerably, which is really highly unusual if you were to look at the growth rates in that segment over the last 4 or 5 years. It's really makes these year's numbers more, I don't want to say concerning necessarily, but just more interesting. But why is that happening? Is that because private practices, particularly those that are using MVP, are they coming up with competitive strategies to divest from that segment of the market? That could be driving what we're seeing as the slowdown, or it could be more of a demand for those types of services. I mean, we're hearing things out there that certain plans are the benefits are getting a little less rich over time. So there were some, you know, it's very regional, and certain plans, you know, in different markets we saw had these big, huge annual hearing aid benefits that never really made a ton of sense to me. And that renewed every 12 months, which is kind of unusual for hearing aids. You know, that's not a typical buying cycle. It's much longer than that. So if those benefits are coming back to earth, that could be also having, and almost certainly playing a role. There's a lot of financial pressure on these Medicare Advantage companies. If you read, there's lots of articles out there. United Healthcare took a real, not due to, I think it was a Department of Justice investigation, but they've got some financial struggles, I think, that could potentially make ancillary benefits like hearing care, while a small percentage of the cost of these plans, you'd think that it could potentially lead to lower benefits and therefore lower demand. So I think it's probably a little bit of everything.
And I think, you know, it's this adaptation. You know, it's not about being the biggest, the strongest, the fastest. It's, you know, it's those that can adapt that'll be king of the jungle. And so I think that what you're seeing is entrepreneurs are adjusting and adapting to what's happened with the managed care as it's grown in the market, saying what they have is not that special. I can duplicate that in my clinic and actually provide a better level of service to these patients. And they present it and they let them make a choice and let the consumer be a consumer. And I think that they, in most cases, win.
Good. I have a couple questions here that I'm going to kind of merge into one, but the general question here is, do we have any data on patients who are purchasing OTC devices and then purchasing prescription devices? And then kind of related to that, anybody have any thoughts on how to attract patients who've purchased OTC devices or purchased at Costco or purchased through managed care plans and maybe, undersatisfied? And, is there a way for us to attract those types of patients into private practices? And Ollie, feel free to take that one.
Yeah, I don't have any data around OTC to prescription, unless we've got a way to track OTC sales, which may be a challenge. Things I've seen work in order to take unsatisfied hearing aid wearers and then attract them towards practices like yours. Like how do we put our stall out? Could this be an adoption plan to share, which is well articulated, well presented, explains that we help people who are unhappy hearing aid wearers to get the performance they've been looking for? Could it be a performance revamp appointment, a 60 to 90-minute appointment where you take them from here to here? Like we probably can all do these things, but nobody knows that we do them until they ask us if we do them. So the more we can package that to say we help these types of people to achieve these outcomes, means that those people know that we can help them.
Yeah, excellent. I wish Dr. Cliff was here to take this question, but I'm sure one of you will fill his shoes on it. So this question is, what are your thoughts on an audiology concierge service? So like take no insurance, no Medicare, no Medicaid, just cash pay, private pay only, which as I understand it, is Dr. Cliff's model. So, but if anyone else has any thoughts on that type of model, love to hear it.
I think, Will, you can speak to this too. I think the data supports it. I mean, we have taken a look at clinics who have been able to drop managed care completely and focus on a certain segment of the market. Again, taking your messaging digitally so people can see what you have. And we see that them do really well. It's almost as if the managed care was an opportunity cost, right? If you're filling a spot with a managed care appointment, then you're potentially missing a spot with a private pay patient. Now, there's a caveat here, and that is you've got to get to a certain size. I mean, you've got to eat. If you have holes in your clinic and your appointments, you're not booked 3 weeks out. If you're not doing, $750,000 a year, with one or maybe two providers, then you probably need to select a couple of contracts to be in, but you can at least be selective and take a look at the ones that are good for your market. But we see more and more clinics moving away that do extremely well. Will, I don't know what you see.
Yeah, no, I generally agree that it's an interesting business model and probably successful in certain markets, particularly. Probably depends on the payer mix. If you happen to operate in an area with a high concentration of certain types of plans, even commercial hearing aid benefit plans, it might not be feasible to opt out entirely from the insurance and just go to a cash pay model. But if you're in a big enough market with enough of that's obviously going to be an affluent customer base that's going to pay out of pocket for everything. I think there's some efficiencies when you don't deal with the insurance companies that can make for a really nice business model. But you have to make sure your market can bear it and have a really unique value proposition.
Did you have something you wanted to add, Ollie?
Yeah, my only comment is I think most practices should be striving towards a 100% private pay model, right? If we're looking at this solely from an economics perspective, it's where we want to be, without the headache of dealing with any external force and being able to just be paid for the work you're doing by the types of patients you want to work with to deliver the types of care that you want. I'm fully behind that model. We have the joy of working with a lot of practices that lean heavily in, but you need to have your stall built out correctly to attract those types of patients and then deliver on the promises that are set out to them.
Awesome. And I think Dan, Nick, and Ollie, you all kind of touched on this in your content, just around strategic model choices and how those are going to differentiate you from your competition and enable you to be successful. So this question, I think, could be answered by any or all of you, which is what percentage of private clinics that you guys know and work with do you feel operate at that level that's going to allow them to kind of weather the storm of these types of industry changes?
Well, I'm sure everybody's going to have different opinions, but you know, I've found that operations are quite difficult for practices, and a lot of practices need help. They need people like Eric Sorensen, or they need the MVP data. I would say from a percentage basis, you guys are looking at the top 15%. You call those the MVPs. I mean, I'm gonna say it's less than half, but I'm not sure what everybody else's opinion is. But there's a lot of work to be done out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have a number, but I think it's, I agree with what Nick said. I think there's I don't know if it's our industry or it's every industry. I don't know that it's that we don't want to adopt what's new, but we don't want to let go of what's old. And I get concerned that some of my colleagues in audiology world can't move on to doing things maybe a newer, faster, better way. I mean, we see with, processes, procedures, but you just can't keep doing what we've done and excel in the marketplace. And so it's those that are willing to change. And I think that's certainly less than 50%.
Okay, great. Well, the only question I have left is from my uncle. So Uncle Johnny, I'll call you later and take that one offline. But thank you everyone for being here, especially those of you who stayed an extra half hour for this Q&A. Really appreciate our panelists so much and all of our attendees. We'll be following up with you guys so that you can have a copy of the recording and access to the slides if you need them. We'll also include contact information for all the panelists in case you'd like to reach out to them or talk to them further. Again, I know it's really hard to say everything you want to say in 8 minutes. So appreciate everybody going along with this today. And here's to a better second half of the quarter. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Talk to you soon.